News Center. Now to a different story altogether. The private schools are now demanding the release of raw marks and scores of the 2020 KCPE examinations before standardization. Officials of the Kenya Private Schools Association, Kirinyaga County, say whereas standardization is a normal examination scoring tool that has been used over time, it would appear the 2020 results were moderated to favor public schools. Now here's KTN's Shadrach Miti, who reports on the latest tweets of events.
The announcement by Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha on April 15th that public schools posted impressive scores in the just released 2020 KCPE results did not sit well with a majority of private school managers and other education stakeholders.
I'm impressed that public schools have shown in the 2020 KCPE examination by scooping 10 out of 15 slots of the overall best 15 candidates.
We are actually worried when the Cabinet Secretary keeps on referring to private schools in a derogatory manner. And we are worried that probably even in the Form 1 selection, things might not be as good as we assume them to be.
As a CS, he doesn't have to mention anything to do with public and private because he's not a cabinet secretary of the public sector alone.
The fact that candidates from public schools scooped 10 out of 15 first slots continues to elicit debate, with the latest dissenting voices coming from Kirinyaga County. Officials of the Kenya Private Schools Association Kirinyaga branch warned the Minister of Education and Kenya National Examination Council to make public raw marks and score for every candidate.
Would like to be given the raw marks before moderation, the raw data.
In a recent communication to its members countrywide, Kenya Private Schools Association Chief Executive Peter Ndoro acknowledged that majority of the 2020 KCPE candidates across the country were seriously affected by the disruptions of COVID-19, which compromised the results, leading to a low mean average for KCPE raw marks. He further pointed out that just a few people understand the science of standardization, hence the resultant confusion over why low marks for the expected high performers and high marks for the expected low performers.
It is not meant to benefit or disadvantage anyone. You can't say that a student who scored 433, right, was actually intended to have scored 420, and those who scored 425, 423, 430 were discriminated. No, it doesn't happen like that. Standardization is a measure that considers every result.
Unfortunately, we now have a country which thinks that if you are poor and in a public school, you are not supposed to pass.
Further, the Kenya Private Schools Association says whereas candidates from public schools dominated the top 10 positions, candidates from private schools dominated the top 100 and top 1,000 positions.
The only issue is we were not number one, we were not number two, but children in private schools were actually among the majority when it comes to the top performers.
The challenge now, it would appear, would be how the entire membership of the private schools will be convinced that the results were not moderated in favor of candidates from public schools. Shadrach Miti, KT News.
Right, so I bring in the CEO of the Kenya Private Schools Association, Mr. Peter Ndoro, joining us virtually. I want to speak to him concerning that decision by government to say that this time round it will have a big role to play when it comes to selection of schools. Mr. Ndoro, thank you for joining us here on KTN News Center. But you know the Form 1 selection process is usually influenced by merit, candidates' choices, regional balance, affirmative action, which opts to favor candidates in regional areas. How will this be achieved when the government says we will choose schools for you based on the choices you had given us?
Thank you very much, Linda, for having me. And before I answer the question that you've just asked, I want to say that the position of the Kenya Private Schools Association is not that we have requested the Kenya National Examination Council to provide us with the raw data. Those are sentiments that have been expressed by individual owners of private schools. But the position of the association is that the Kenya National Examination Council should actually be able to educate all of us, both public and private, in terms of understanding how the standardization is done and how it affects the marks. Because yes, it is indeed true that in 2020, the expectation of very many of our candidates and parents and schools were not met. But when we interrogated the results, we found out that, yes, the procedure that has been used by Kenya National Examination Council over the years has been the cause of the results that came out. But so far, as Kenya Private Schools Association, we are in the process of engaging the Kenya National Examination Council so that together we can be able to let our members understand what caused the results that we saw this particular year. But even having said that, we also appreciate the candidates who performed very well. We want to appreciate and congratulate the candidates from public schools who dominated the top 15 positions. At the same time, we also want to congratulate and appreciate the candidates from private schools who dominated the top 100 positions and also the top 1,000 positions who came from private schools. But all these are our Kenyan children. They are not public or private. They are Kenyan children, and we congratulate all of them. When it comes to issues of Form 1 selection, so far, I've had and seen some communication that is doing the rounds that it's the Ministry of Education that is going to select and place candidates in schools. To the best of our knowledge, as Kenya Private Schools Association, that discussion has not been brought to us. The Ministry of Education itself is not aware that the selection process that was undertaken by the candidate schools and the Ministry of Education will be discarded and a certain different criteria applied in Form 1 selection. So to the best of our knowledge is that whatever the candidates selected in 2020 KCPE will still be used. And it's our expectation that the process will not discriminate on any child, whether public or private schools. It will be applied based on merit and also based on equity.
Ms. Ndoro, what the Ministry of Education is saying is that it will conduct a single selection and a placement exercise for Form 1 students this year. Because, during the previous exercise, the process was actually open to parents and candidates to select, their preferred schools in the second round of selection. That this is not what is going to happen this time round. We're seeing the ministry saying, based on what you had chosen, we will place you in a school that you're best fitting to go to. So the question is, how transparent will this process be if the ministry is supposed to do that?
Linda, I want to inform you that we've never had a time when after the KCPE results have been released, parents have had to sit down again and to choose schools. The Ministry of Education has always relied on the selection that has been done by parents when they were registering for KCPE. So this time round, the selection is going to be done by the Ministry of Education, and the results are going to be released as promised by the Cabinet Secretary around 28th of May this particular year. So what the Cabinet Secretary is saying is that when the candidates have been selected to join either national schools, extra county, county, or sub-county, or that, for that matter, and you miss in this particular selection, which has always happened over the years, what happens is that they look at the school that you can best fit. But it is not to mean that the particular process that was applied by the parents in selecting the schools will be discarded. It is only in those rare circumstances where a candidate fails to get admitted to the schools that they chose that the government tries to place them. And this has happened over the years. It is not that it's going to happen this year. No, it has always happened. And that is for the very, very few cases where a candidate misses the national, the extra county, and the county, probably because of poor selection or other factors that may have contributed to that. But ordinarily, this has always affected very, very few candidates across the country. So far, the assurance that we have got from the Ministry of Education is that there is no change in terms of admission criteria to secondary schools.
All right, Peter Ndoro, the CEO of the Kenya Private Schools Association. Asante sana for joining us here on KTN News Center. Of course, we'll have you once again next time, once that process of the selection exercise begins, just to see whether, the process will be free and fair, and how disadvantaged probably some of the candidates who scored 350 marks will feel at the end of that selection exercise, the Form 1 selection exercise, bringing me to the end of the first of KTN News Center. But in just a few minutes, I'll be right back with a special report about the health and safety of employees and employers at their workplaces, because that has been a discussion throughout the week when the world is celebrating the Health and Safety Week. And all that after the short commercial break I'm taking right now here on KTN News Center. My guest already in studio just to have